3, 2.
And we are still here at we're still here at Beat the Daily Grind for civic engagement. Where do we go from here? Next up, we have Sean Riggin. What I'm going to do is the same thing I did with the other people who were here. I'm going to ask Sean Riggin to introduce himself. But right now he is running for Atlantic County Sheriff. So one question before I turn it over to my panel is this. I need you to explain for our listeners and the people who are watching in AtlanticCityFocus.com what it is the Atlantic County Sheriff does, but I need you to explain it in a way so simple that a radio station DJ can understand.
So let me say this first of all. The duties of the Atlantic County Sheriff really fall into 3 buckets, and I'll tell you what they are. But the first thing I'll say to you is this. You're an Atlantic County taxpayer. An Atlantic County taxpayer pays $14 million a year, give or take, for the Atlantic County Sheriff's Office. And you need me to explain to you what he's doing. I think you should stop there and sort of think that through a little bit, right? We're right now asking about what it is that somebody does. You know, we should all know what the Atlantic County Sheriff does, and we're spending $14 million a year to do it. And I'll tell you this, when Eric Sheffler was the sheriff, and even when Frank Ballas was the sheriff before him, they had programs and practices that were out there that people knew about, right? Like Eric had Rising, Hope One. He's coming out and just trying to take the addicts off the street and get them where they're going. I think this administration, in as much as they are well-meaning folks, I think that we have a real lack of what the Atlantic County Sheriff's Office is supposed to be doing overall. So I'll tell you what I think they should be doing. I'll tell you what their job is and where I think we should be doing.
Can I make one clarification for my readers and my listeners? I ask that question of every elected official, every person who is running for office. I ask them what it is that their office does, only because there may be a listener who honestly has no idea what any county sheriff does, how that's different from law enforcement in their city.
Sure.
And so I ask that question, and the reason why I say, please explain it in a way that a radio station disc jockey can understand it, is no, because there's somebody who is listening. If I don't say it like that, he will think that I'm talking down to them. And so I want to bring us all up on the same level of understanding, so that nobody feels like, well, this conversation is too highbrow for me. So I just wanted to explain that, and you have every right to make clarification about how you feel about the current sheriff administration. But I just wanted to let you know why I asked that question the way I did in light of your response.
My response is because I get this question a lot. So I'll put it this way. There's 3 buckets for the sheriff's office, right? There's courthouse security, which is the majority of what the sheriff's office in Atlantic County does, right? There are 2 big courthouses and then a lot of ancillary units, right? There's one in Atlantic City, there's one in Mays Landing. That's where the bulk, right? Probably 80% or so of our sheriff's officers are on any given day. And I'll tell you that overall traffic in those courthouses is down since COVID, because we've taken a lot of stuff virtual. But overall, that's where the bulk goes. And then we have sort of the administrative functions of the court. And when I say that, I mean evictions and sheriff sales as well as warrants, right? The things that the judges put out there and they say, hey, listen, Sean didn't show up to court. Sean is now on the run. Sean is a fugitive warrant. Now we're going to have the Atlantic County Sheriff's Office warrant squad go out and find Sean, right? And then the third bucket is the sort of the next level. So we have, municipal resources, the Atlantic City Police Department. We have county resources, the Atlantic County Sheriff's Office, and then we have state police, right? So we kind of work our way up. We're in a mutual aid, heavy industry. And so that's that third bucket. Is how do we take those resources and pool them across law enforcement? So that they're the next, not higher authority, but this sort of support network to local law enforcement. And I think that's where my team and I would like to spend a lot of time thinking through how do we pull more resources from those other 2 buckets and get them over to aiding local law enforcement. But generally, those are the 3 buckets, right?
Thank you, Officer Riggin. I'm going to turn the questions over to my fellow panelists. The only request I have is again that you try and keep the answers to 2 to 5 minutes so we can get in as many questions as possible. And again, you have every opportunity to come back for follow-up interviews. We'd love to have you.
Great, thank you.
So I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
So we met through Indivisible Atlantic City, so I have some self-interest in this question. Under what circumstances do you believe it's appropriate for law enforcement to disperse a peaceful protest, and what standards would guide that decision?
So, under the auspices of the Sheriff's Department would only come in for something like that as a resource to local law enforcement. And that is absolutely the way it should be, right? So when you protest in Atlantic City, the local Atlantic City police officers know you, know your protest, so specifically, right? We just did this here, and we knew everybody that was organizing the event, we knew who they were, we kind of had a sense of the way that it was going to go. Those are the folks that should be making the decision on when those things get dispersed, right? That should not come from a county resource who doesn't know anybody, doesn't know the players, doesn't know the game, just shows up to say this is not going to get it. So for the Sheriff's Department, I would say that is always as a secondary resource, right, to be called in by local police. Otherwise, there is a very specific guideline, but really what it comes down to is this. It should be impossible to get arrested by accident at a protest, is kind of the thing that we go by, right? You get arrested because you need to. And those are the conversations that, not to let our listeners behind the curtain, you and I had that conversation, right? We're not going to arrest anybody by accident. We're going to arrest people who are here to get arrested, and that, we understand, right? This country has a great history of civic engagement and civil disobedience, and some people want to get arrested as part of their cause, and we totally get that. But we're going to understand that up front. We're not going to do it by accident. So in the moment to moment, those are things that we're going to discuss. I think if I were to set bright lines here, I think there'd be a million arguments and I wouldn't get it just right, but there are guidelines. At the end of the day, it's sort of a negotiated understanding throughout the protest, and you shouldn't be able to do it by accident.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to get all my questions
Yes.
out. So this one is a two-parter. It's related to immigration enforcement. So how will you balance, as you know, fear of ICE can discourage members of our immigrant community
Yes.
from calling the police or using public services. So how will you balance public safety with maintaining trust in law enforcement within our immigrant communities? And then another part to that question, so it's really two questions. You mentioned transparency in the sheriff's office. Would you commit to publicly reporting any cooperation between your office and ICE, including detainers, transfers, or joint operations?
So the first thing is, I'm not sure where that sort of balance lies. I mean, we are here in New Jersey, and I think we have the benefit of what was the Immigrant Trust Directive and is now the Immigrant Trust Act, which is a phenomenal law. And the reason I think it's phenomenal is A, it's survived both Republican and Democratic administrations, right? It's survived multiple attorneys general. So it's had a lot of really smart people looking at it, people that are engaged on all the sides of the issue. But in addition to that, it says local law enforcement doesn't engage in immigration enforcement, like period. There's no caveats, there's no carve-outs, you don't have to think that hard about it. They made it cop-proof, right? Like we don't have to think that hard about this in order to figure it out. I don't engage with the IRS when they come and seize your building as part of their enforcement action. I don't get involved in that because I'm a police officer and not an IRS agent. They are technically law enforcement. I don't know what they do. So that sort of makes the whole thing a lot easier to deal with. As far as the transparency, I would say again, it's a matter of law. And we've gotten ourselves into a situation, and I want to be careful not to go. You see my soapbox, right? You see me getting ready to jump up on it. We have gotten to a place where we often do not trust law enforcement, and there may be good reasons for that. But then we've given them this huge discretion and said to them, why can't you be the thing that stands in the way of legislation, of executive orders, of all of these things? And the fact is, law enforcement is just not set up that way. Law enforcement is an executive tool to enforce laws, and if there's a law in place, then we should follow. And if there's not a law in place, then we shouldn't be out there making things up. And I think it's as simple as that. So I would really like to think that I have been part of creating a more transparent and legitimate law enforcement presence in Atlantic County. That has certainly been my goal. And I don't think I get to decide whether I've succeeded in that or not, but I hope that that's been the case. At the end of the day, the only way that that happens is if we follow the laws. And we have to be able to hold our legislators accountable and to have them create laws that make sense. And I think that we've gotten to this place where we're so frustrated with legislation, we've given up on it, and now we're asking law enforcement to get in the middle and start weeding through things that I just don't think we're qualified or we're really resourced to do.
So, my colleague has, talked about ICE, and as an educator inside the community, there's a lot of mistrust with children. I work with kids. How would you try to bridge that gap to teach the new generation or to educate them on what you do and build that trust?
So can you explain a little bit more what you mean? Because I
Yeah,
want to make sure I'm answering your
first
question.
is if I ask my students, if you see a cop car come down the street, how do you feel? Now, for me as a taxpayer, I'm happy because it means my money is well spent. There's a patrol.
Right.
But for a lot of children, when they see a cop car go by their house, they're afraid. So, what could you do to try to educate the children more to the role that the sheriff department plays within the community to lessen that fear?
So I'm going to give you an answer that I don't like, quite frankly. I'm going to be honest with you. As a police chief, I had officers that were involved in an officer-involved shooting, twice actually, relatively close together. And in that environment, we had to treat our police officers like criminal defendants, right? They were effectively criminal defendants at that point. They had a justifiable homicide, right? Something very serious had happened, and we had serious and really meaningful rules in place on how we had to handle that. We had to take away their guns. We had to do all of these things. And in that environment, I can say to you, listen, let me talk to you about legitimacy. Let me talk to you about the way that we handle investigations. Let me tell you about how we handle officers that we think may have used excessive force, or even in those cases, we want to rule it out from the very beginning. We didn't have any reason to suspect they used excessive force. And in that case, my police officers, I know them, I know their kids, and I have to treat them like criminal defendants for a year because that's what the New Jersey system requires, and I stand by it because it's a huge, responsibility to have that amount of authority in the community, right? Mm-hmm. And in that environment, I can say to you, you can have faith in our police officers, and here are all the reasons why, here are the rules that we follow. When ICE agents shot people in Minnesota, and 20 minutes later, the presidents and members of the cabinet were saying it was a justifiable shooting, I don't have any answer to that. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to try to come up with an answer to that. If we have two sets of law enforcement systems in place, one for local and state, I can speak to that and I can explain to you why that's a legitimate and a just process. But if ICE agents can shoot people in Minnesota and 20 minutes later somebody could go on TV and say that it was right when it clearly was not, then there's not really anything I could say that would take away from the lived experience and obvious, visible, upset of what had happened there. What I would ask is, and this is the part of the answer that I really don't like, is you can't hold, as a community member, if you want to be engaged and you want to be fair, you cannot hold my police officers to standards for things that the federal government is doing in other states away. I'll give you a very brief story. There was something called 8 Can't Wait. It was from NAACP, I believe, after the killing of Michael Brown, I believe. You understand, it was a tough time, and I think that was where it came out of. There were these 8 reforms. And I had somebody come to me and they said, hey Sean, we need to have these 8 reforms. We need to have them right now. That's why they called them the 8 that can't wait. I said, okay, well, let's take a look. Let's see where we're at. And I looked at those 8 reforms and we went through it, and it turned out there was one place on planet Earth where all 8 of those reforms were in place, and it was the state of New Jersey. And the person that was protesting in the state of New Jersey telling me that we had these 8 that can't wait. Right? So some of this stuff is, I feel like, I know that it's not disingenuous, but it is extremely frustrating for law enforcement to be held responsible for what the Minnesota, whatever does, or some constable in New Mexico, because I don't have any more authority over what that person does or what those laws are than in Germany, right? There is no connection between state law enforcement outside of New Jersey. I will tell you this. In the state of New Jersey, We have some of the most professional police officers, some of the best training, and some of the highest standards in the entire world. Now, the extent to which we don't hit those standards, we can and should do better. We always can and should do better. But if you're looking for policy, New Jersey has literally some of the best policies in the world, and I've been all over the world to see it. We're hitting the marks that we should be hitting, and we should continue to strive to hit those marks that we have.
I do have a question as a follow-up, and I think you may have already answered this question, but I'm still going to ask. At several NAACP meetings I attended, people have said that there's a perception of crime in Atlantic City versus the actual numbers, which shows that crime has gone down in Atlantic City. Can you speak on that at all?
I can. So where we're sitting right now, it's funny. So I retired as the chief in Pleasantville, and then went back to work. I did some consulting for a little while. And one of the areas I consulted was actually the Chelsea Economic Development Corporation, which is across the street. We used to have meetings in this restaurant. And one of the things that we did was polling. When I was consulting for them, we did polling, man on the street interviews. We did 100 of them. Let me rephrase. I think we did more than 100 of them. We did enough to be statistically significant. I forget what the exact numbers were. We did it a couple years in a row. And here's what we found out. People were upset about crime, and they absolutely were. But they were not afraid. They were frustrated. And when I say that, they were not afraid of being robbed on the street. They were not afraid of being raped and murdered on the street. They were frustrated about the appearance of homelessness and petty crime. That is true, and it is valid. Right?
Right.
I have had a number of complaints lately, and we're all grown-ups. There is a continued issue with petty crime in Atlantic City.
What is considered a petty crime?
I'm going to explain this.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at let's go to 2015 or so, right? 2015 or so, we had a different bail system in the state of New Jersey. In 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, we went through a bail reform process. And I'll say this, I stand behind our bail reform process wholeheartedly. And what we said was, you were not any longer going to be held in jail for a $20 shoplifting charge, which I think we can all agree is a good idea. It also said, you are not going to get out of jail when you shot someone because you can come up with $100,000 cash bail, which I think we can also agree is a great idea. And so we made those changes, and I actually was really, involved at the time. Later in that process, I was the president of County Chiefs. I got up and I was at the talking groups, right? I was the guy on the diet saying, this is why this is a great idea for South Jersey. But here's what I can tell you. When I worked at the county jail in the late 90s, there was about 12 or 1,300 inmates. At the county jail today, there's about 800 inmates. There's 400 visible homeless people in Atlantic City that are drug addicted and involved in petty crime. We fixed bail reform. We did a great job. There have been knock-on effects that are really problematic. Now, I think we can agree that homeless people should not be in jail just for being homeless. I think we can agree that drug addicts shouldn't be in jail just for being drug addicts. But what we did is when we defunded all of those institutions in the late 80s, and we said that we were going to come up with grand solutions for what to do with all these folks, instead of coming up with those solutions, we closed the state hospitals, and then we changed bail reform so that those people don't go to jail anymore, so where are they going to go? So are those people being charged, those people we're talking about that are on Atlantic Avenue, that are in Chelsea? Yeah, they are being criminally charged. You know what that means? It means they're off the street for 45 minutes and they're back out because we changed bail reform and we're not going to keep them in jail for those petty offenses. I know it's a long answer, but you have to have some sense of the history to understand what we're talking about. At the end of the day, law enforcement is taking meaningful action against these folks, but the legislation doesn't allow for any sentences for these people. And so it's a complicated problem, and I think when people try to oversimplify it, they don't do it justice. There's no villain here. These are people that are homeless and drug addicted. They need help. There's no help to give them, and so people look at the police and they say, why isn't my neighborhood safe? I don't know, right? But I do know that you're holding law enforcement responsible for something you decline to hold the legislature responsible. And that's where I think we need to be working. We can only enforce the laws that are in front of us. Judges can only input the sentences that are justified. You can get mad because somebody's washing windows or sitting on your porch 27 times. But at the end of the day, it's a petty disorderly offense. It carries less than 30 days in jail. What are you going to do?
maybe there are already programs in place like this. I understand your point that we can't hold police officers responsible for things that federal officers are doing or federal government is doing. And I totally understand that point, but it doesn't take away from the fact that people, especially children in marginalized communities, do fear the police.
Yeah.
Do you think that the sheriff's office would ever create programs that could help establish trust between our communities and look at your office as a trusted resource, not something to be afraid of?
I think we have to. I don't think it's like a could we maybe. Like I think we absolutely have to. And I think if you look at my history in Pleasantville and Atlantic City, you will find that there are two things that we absolutely push out hard. And one of them was legitimacy, and the other was public communications. We have to be talking all of the time. I will tell you that 6 months ago, what we were seeing from the sheriff's office was police blotters with people's names in them as though they were out there being grand criminals. And I'll tell you, you don't end up in jail for less than $500 in fines, right? And I'll give you a homework project. Go look at the police blotter that's out there. Now, most police departments are not putting this out anymore, but go look at the police blotter and you'll see over and over again, so-and-so was brought in for child support. Nobody's going to jail for child support. So-and-so was brought in for a $400 warrant. Nobody's going to jail for a $400 warrant. Those are people that were brought into the station. We did a summons. We gave them a new court date and we sent them on their way, but we also put their name in the newspaper and on Facebook and sent it out to conservative media, to everybody. The conservative media is who's running it. And goes out there and says, Alice got arrested for a shoplifting warrant, and here's her name and here's all the things. I'm not sure who's benefiting from that. I will say, I was close with Sheriff Scheffler, and I was the president of the county chiefs when we had these conversations that we wouldn't do blotters, and I supported, I wouldn't do them either. Because I don't think that name and shame nonsense is appropriate. I think there's people that haven't been found guilty yet, and even if they have, what is the value of putting somebody's, if you're not paying your child support, and I put your name in the paper, you know who his kids are, and you know who his wife is, right? And so we're not just shaming you, we're shaming your whole family, and now, who's benefiting from this? And by the way, we're not putting you in jail, because then you're never going to get, be able to pay those things. So that kind of name and shame stuff, I think is not helpful. But what are we pushing out there into the world that says these are the meaningful things that we're doing, and what do we talk about is really what's important. So Sheriff Scheffler was only talking project, was only talking programs, right? And some of the pushback that we got was that, oh, you're not doing law enforcement. He was, but he was talking about programs. And I say this as somebody who was giving him that advice. It was post-George Floyd. We need to be out there talking about programs. We need to be talking about only community stuff. And people thought that he had stopped arresting people. And it's something that I feel bad about to this day. I think the community revolted a little bit. I understand where they were coming from. So we need to be talking about both, but we can never stop talking about the things that we're doing to be engaged in the community. And not like it's some special thing, not like it's a volunteerism thing, but like this is part of our job. Our job, we are the people in law enforcement who are full-time community members. We get paid to do things. So Robert Peel, the founder of modern policing, said we are people that get to do full-time what everybody should be doing in general. So we need to be talking about it all of the time.
Alrighty, you are watching Civic Engagement. Where do we go from here? Our special guest for this segment is Sean Riggin, who is running for Atlantic County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff. And we're going to wrap up, but I just wanted to ask my panelists to prepare their last two questions. And then we can go.
I can talk, man.
Okay. Okay, Nathan, you have a question?
I mean, Sean has said a lot.
Yes.
A lot. So I guess my question would be, what do you think the biggest challenge when you're elected would be for you?
I think it's a question of how do we build those economies of scale to do what I want, right? Because I have great ideas. I want to be able to transport prisoners in Atlantic County from the municipal police departments to the county jail. I want to be able to find resources to do these things that I don't want local police doing. Because, I work at ACPD, right? ACPD, we got a bunch of cops on the street. If we have to take one to the county jail, you're not substantially less safe during that time. In Northfield, you're down a good chunk of your police department so that person is running, right? There's only 4 cops on the street, or however many. You're substantially less safe while that person's being taken to county jail. So I want to find these economies of scale. In order to do that, I think we've got to be really willing to explore new ways of doing things and undertake some pretty heavy reviews of what does it take to secure a courthouse. And we're going to have some trade-offs on how we figure these things out. That will take a lot of buy-in from a lot of people. I am optimistic about the county executive, Levinson. I think that he's been a purveyor of a supporter of those kind of economy of scale sort of missions. But obviously, I'm a Democrat, he's a Republican. You know what I mean? That we have a Republican commissioner board. So there's going to have to be a lot of give and take in order to get what I want. And frankly, I'm going to have to be able to go hat in hands of people and say, listen, this is my good idea. This is why I think we can do it. I think we can transcend politics. I think everybody involved has known each other for 30 years. And we're able to come to something. But that's not nothing, and I recognize that it's not nothing. It's a heavy undertaking. Luckily, I have a phenomenal team around me, and I think that we can get it done. We're going to find out.
I have a question. You said that you are a Democrat. I don't even want to go into Democrat, Republican.
Sure.
But this is a question that I ask most people once they're elected or while they're running. As sheriff, or even as your role now with Atlantic City, what is your approach or your mindset, being that, you get elected? What would you say to the voter who had more confidence or actually voted for Joe Donahue? What would you say to people who, when they bring up Sean Riggin in Atlantic City, may say, I don't like the current face of police in Atlantic City? What would you say to people who your detractors, whom you still have to serve in your capacity in law enforcement?
So the first thing that I would say is this, just to be fair. I stand 100% on the action of the Atlantic City Police Department today and over for quite a while now. I think the Atlantic City Police Department had some challenges to overcome, and I think they overcame nearly all of them before I got there. So I'm not even taking credit for it. I'm just saying I stand firmly with the Atlantic City Police Department. I think Chief Sergeant has done a phenomenal job, and I would be a supporter of him. My job is to support him, and I continue to do that. The next thing that I would say is this. I am a known quantity, right? I didn't come out of the blue. I didn't, retire 20 years ago and then, go and engage in politics and that sort of stuff. It's not where I'm from. I've been in the newspaper, the press in Atlantic City for the last 15 years. I've been saying the same things and doing the same things. I've had a number of friends come to me and they say, Sean, I love you. I've been your friend for a long time, but I got to vote for the other guy because I'm a Republican. And I say, that's great. They go vote for the other guy. I have friends, candidly, who have told me that they're friends and they continue to be my friends, but they can't vote for me because I'm a Republican. I don't like that, or because I'm a Democrat. I don't like that, but it is what it is. I come from a Democrat family. My mom was at the first Clinton inaugural, right? Like, I grew up in a blue household, and that's the way that we have been since I was a kid. So I'm absolutely, you know what I mean? I've been a Democrat my entire life, but I'm also left-handed. And when we look at the Atlantic County Sheriff's Office, the way that the impact of being left-handed and a Democrat should be similar. It just doesn't matter that much. We're talking about, justice is justice. Following the law is following the law. I don't have some grand expedition sort of mindset here. I want to figure out how to save money to do the things that I think are important. I want to get people behind me to do those things. I want to do them within the confines of the law. And then I want to go serve the public. That's it. That's the only thing I've ever done. And I would stand on my record as much as I can. And you know what? If I'm wrong, people aren't going to vote for me. And it's as simple as that.
How can people get in contact with Sean Riggin?
So I said this to you before. My phone number is 609-457-2957. It's been the same phone number for the last 25 or 30 years. And people have it. On top of that, I would say follow us at Riggin for Sheriff. And that's on Instagram as well as Facebook. I will tell you that our Facebook presence is phenomenal. And that is because I have very little to do with it. My wife does it, but I do read everything before it goes out into the world. So I support it, but if it looks good, that's not me. That's my wife. So the good news is if you elect me, you get both of us. And that's important. 27 years on May 1st.
All right, this has been Civic Engagement. We're just about ready to say this wrap, but I want to thank Sean Riggin.
Thank you.
I want to thank my other guests who were here earlier, Tracy Thompson from Hamilton Township. I want to thank candidates for Congress, Tim Alexander and Terry Reese. Alice Carcelli from Indivisible Atlantic City, Empathy United. Do you have any last words before before we let you go?
I don't, thank you for inviting me today, this is great.
Okay. Nathan Davis, Atlantic County educator and hopefully soon to be contributor to Atlantic City Focus. Do you have any, words before we go?
Thank you and good night.
Okay, all right. When we come back, we're here at Beat the Daily Grind Cafe, and I'm going to ask a question or two to one of the owners, Constance Mandy Days.
Is she here?